Okay, so I'm having you draw this spectrum. We did a spectrum factoring the economics unit or objective, if you remember, because what it shows is a range of information. For the economics, remember it was on the far left, it was no government involvement, right, laissez-faire. And then to the far right was all government control. And then you could kind of be anywhere in between, right? Okay? So, this is a political spectrum, not an economic spectrum. Okay, and we put arrows on both sides because it's just showing that range. It could go either direction and even maybe off of the, further to the right or the left, off of the spectrum. And so for this, to the left is going to be your liberal party, which is called the Democratic Party in America. Okay? And they are oftentimes referred to as the left. Okay, the liberal left is doing this, blah, 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 blah. To the right is the conservative party, or in America we call them the Republican Party. And oftentimes they are referred to as the right as well. You guys, what is the GOP? It's one of your terms on your study guide. And you can see, I have on the board here, that the GOP is with the Republican Party. So that tells you a little bit about it. But what does GOP stand for? Anybody been looking at their vocabulary yet? Defining your terms? Because you guys, we're on short time here for the end of this objective. So that's something that you need to make sure you're getting done on your study guide, okay? But does anybody know what GOP stands for? Yes?
Grand Old Party.
Grand Old Party. Yeah, so the Republican Party also calls themselves the Grand Old Party, the GOP sometimes. And on the slide here that you have in front of you, there's some other things that are sort of symbolic of the two parties that it's important to know and recognize. First, notice the color of the parties up here. There's the Democratic Party is blue, the Republican Party is red, right? Okay, those are the colors that they sort of have adopted as their own colors. It's kind of funny sometimes to like see if you can tell just by looking at a candidate which party they are, because especially the guys will a lot of times wear their party color, like as their tie or whatever. I always say Hillary Clinton owned a lot of blue pantsuits as a kind of, I think, or at least this is what I thought about that, was that she was always kind of drawing to the fact that she's a Democrat. But then also the animals. The Republican Party animal is what? It's right up there. It's an elephant. The Democratic Party animal is a donkey. Yeah. Sometimes this seems a little weird to people. I see some furrowed brows and they're like, why? Why an elephant and a donkey? And it really goes back to political cartoons, you guys. I know they're your favorite thing, right? Those political cartoons. But there was a guy, very well known for creating political cartoons, called Thomas Nast. I know you've, even in your social studies classes, you've seen some of his political cartoons, guaranteed. But he was the first to draw the Republican and the Democratic parties as an elephant and a donkey. And part of the reason is, do you guys know what elephants are known for? For their memory, for their long memory. And then if you think about the Conservative Party is about tradition, about doing things how the Founding Fathers had intended them to be done when they wrote the Constitution. doing things the way we've been doing them for years and years and years, that makes sense then that the elephant, right, would represent this party of tradition, that long memory, remembering how things have been done, right? Whereas the donkey, I mean, I guess you could say is a little bit less tame. I don't know, they're known for kind of sort of breaking out, if you want an analogy for this, for sort of breaking out of their enclosures and not wanting to be confined. And the Democratic Party, the Liberal Party, is about change. They want things to change. Society changes, they think our interpretation of the Constitution should change. That we should evolve, that we should move forward and not worry so much about how it was done in the past, but how it needs to be done today. Okay? So, that's just a few of those things. And then you've done your own political ideology. Part of the reason that we start the unit with you doing your political ideology is so that right up front, even though you may not know what all of the things were on there, hopefully you looked them up and you figured it out, but at least you know somewhat where you might fall on this spectrum. All right? And let me tell you that whatever you are now is going to change. All right, it is definitely, where you will be in 5 years is not necessarily where you are now on the spectrum. Because as we talked about with political socialization, our opinions are socialized. They come from our experiences, okay? And you're going to have, here in, you guys, in another year, your experiences are going to change quite a bit. A lot of you are going to be moving out of your homes with your parents, if you haven't already, right? A lot of you are going to maybe go to college or get your job, right? That's going to change the way that you live your life and the people you come in contact with and the things you experience on a day-to-day basis. You will not be coming to this building anymore. So your ideology will change throughout your life. So we're going to compare ideologies of the two parties today. The purpose of what we're doing is to look at, I've lost my black, there it is, my black Expo marker. Okay. The purpose is for you, if you've looked at your study guide, one of the things you need to know is the different ideas between the two parties. How do they differ? What do they think about or work for? And so what we are looking at today is called their party platform. Now, if you did your work yesterday, that was one of the terms that was on there. What is a platform?
It's like the beliefs that you
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally just their list or set of beliefs that the party has. It's their official party line on all of the different issues, okay? And where the Democratic Party will have, you know, a stance on, let's say, I don't know, the death penalty, the Republican Party will also have a stance on the death penalty, okay? That list of all of their beliefs, all of the things that they say this is officially what the party thinks about this, is called the party platform. Okay, and that is kind of important to know, but does that mean that every Democrat believes or agrees with every single thing on that list? No. No. Or Republican. They will disagree actually with quite a few of the things. So it's really important, and I'm going to bring that up quite a bit today, that even though this is exactly what the party thinks, that doesn't mean that all the party members believe that. Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to start here with economic ideas. I would want you to make a bulleted list below or above or wherever you need to your spectrum. Okay, and whenever you make a point for the Democratic Party on an issue, you are going to want to make a point, the counterpoint, for what the Republicans say about that same issue, okay? And so make sure you're listening really carefully to what I'm saying to write down so that you have the correct information. This PowerPoint or slideshow goes a little bit more into detail than what you need to on your notes, okay? So the first thing, when we look at economic ideas, all right, is that the Democratic Party wants to increase minimum wage, okay? So your first bullet under Democratic Party should be increase minimum wage. Let's go ahead to the next bullet under the Democratic Party. They want to raise taxes for the wealthy. Okay? No, that's the second bullet under Democratic Party. Okay, we're going to list those and then we'll come to the Republican side. Okay, that is actually called, and I would like for you to put that maybe in parentheses next to it, when you say increase taxes for the wealthy, that's called a progressive tax. That's what they believe in, is progressive tax. As your income progresses, the more you pay. Okay, the more you make, the more you pay. All right? That is the official Democratic Party stance on taxes. Okay? And also that the government can produce jobs. That's your third bullet under the Democratic Party. The government can produce jobs. Now, I know you didn't really get to talk about, in your U.S. history class last year, you didn't really get to talk about the Great Depression or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was our president at the time, right?
I think we talked more about like the Great Depression, but
Not about the president and what he did. So FDR, okay, what's wrong?
I don't remember if it was him or if it was someone else.
Okay, it is FDR who was president during the Depression. He's our president that was elected 4 times, right? And he died in his 4th term. But he established a program called the New Deal during the Great Depression. And part of the purpose of the whole purpose of the New Deal was to try and bring the country out of the Great Depression. And part of the things that he did within the New Deal, some of those programs were literally creating jobs within the government so that they could hire people and people could go back to work and they're making money and then they're going to invest in the economy by buying things, and it's going to get the economy going and pull us out of the Depression. It worked under the New Deal, and FDR was a Democrat, and so it makes sense then that the Democratic Party still believes that the government should help people by providing jobs, okay? Now, if we compare all those things to the Republican Party, the first thing we said was increasing minimum wage, right? Under the Democrats? Okay. So for the Republican Party, they do not believe that minimum wage should be increased because they believe it would hurt business. They look at increasing minimum wage from the perspective of the business. That means they're going to have to pay people more. It means that that may mean that they have to lay people off because they can't pay as many workers, or if they keep their workers, they're going to have to increase their prices, which hurts the consumer because it's harder to buy their products. They may not sell as much, okay? The Republicans are looking at it more from a business aspect. The Democrats are looking at it from a worker, an employee, saying if you're making less than $15 an hour, because that's what, the last couple of years, that's what's been on the ballot, has been, are we going to increase minimum wage to $15 an hour? Do you guys remember hearing about that a couple of years ago? Okay. Some states, remember federalism, states can kind of decide what they want to do. Some states like Kansas said, absolutely not, we're not doing that. They didn't increase it at all. Some states like New York State did it immediately to $15 an hour. And then some states like us did kind of like a hybrid thing with it, where We didn't raise it to $15 an hour, but we raised it a little bit, and then it'll go up a little bit more after so long, and that kind of thing. And the Democratic Party supports this idea because they said this is a living wage. This is what you need to make to be able to support yourself and not have to have 2 and 3 jobs. Okay? But at the same time, it is true that some of those things would happen if you raise the minimum wage to the businesses, and then we all end up paying more for products anyway. This is the debate, right? Okay? When it comes to the progressive tax, the Republicans do not agree with what they believe is class warfare. They said you're attacking the wealthy people because they've been more successful and made money. And so they would prefer a flat tax.
Do you just want us to write flat tax or progressive tax on the second bulletin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Just as long as you know what progressive tax is and flat tax, okay? Now, a flat tax just means, I'm sure you can probably figure that out by thinking about it. A flat tax is just everybody pays the same. And they actually would even support lowering taxes on everybody. Okay, because the Democratic Party is about, they raise taxes to provide more. The Republican Party would cut taxes and not provide as much for people. Okay, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute. So, then lastly, businesses should produce jobs, not the government. Are you picking up on a little bit of the, where if we were on the economic spectrum? I'll let you finish writing. Where would the Republican Party and the Democratic Party be on the economic spectrum? If it was to the left, no government involvement, laissez-faire, and to the right is all government control, where would the Democratic Party be? Okay, definitely not over to the no government, right? So that, would they be further to the right than the left? Okay, where would the Republican Party be? Further to the left, right? And there's a lot in the Republican Party that would be real close to the laissez-faire, okay? All right, good. So how about then moving away from economic ideas, we'll look at social and human ideas. So the Democratic Party bases their ideas more on community and social responsibility. Doing things, passing things, creating programs and services for people so that it is more about all of us and making sure everyone has what they need, making sure everyone is protected, etc. Everyone as a group, okay? Whereas on the Republican Party, they are more based on individual rights and justice, okay? More about the individual, okay? So when it comes to this, you guys, the Democratic Party, so let's start with the Republican Party. You guys, the Republican Party is most concerned with not having their rights or freedoms infringed upon. Okay? They're up for the government doing what needs to be done as long as it's not keeping me from losing my rights or freedoms. The Democratic Party is more willing to say, that's okay, I'm going to give up some of those rights and freedoms in order for the benefit of society as a whole. right? So for example, I guess a good example I could use would be the Patriot Act. You know what that is? After 9/11, the Congress and the President passed the Patriot Act, which allowed our intelligence community, like FBI, CIA, to wiretap phones and keep a better eye on what communications we as citizens and what's going on in this country, right? The communications that's happening so that they could maybe thwart more terrorist attacks. The Republican Party members, more of them were like, oh, that is a violation of my privacy under the Constitution. I understand it may make us safer, but I would rather be less safe and maintain my individual rights and freedoms. Whereas the Democratic Party had many more people that are like, look, we just got attacked, 3,000 people died. I'd rather give up some of that to feel more safe. Does that make sense? So let me ask you about masks. Are there two distinct sort of sides to the mask debate?
Yeah.
What are they?
No mask, all masks.
Okay, like that you should wear a mask to help protect your fellow citizen and you know, get COVID over with and all that stuff, right? So masks are good, wear them. And then there's the other side that's like, not even sure COVID's real. Some people say it's not real at all, right? But it's the government shouldn't be able to tell me to wear a mask or where I can go, who I can be around, whether I can go to church or not. One side sees the mask as, yes, it's infringing on some of my freedom, right? But that's okay because everybody should wear the mask to protect each other so that we all are healthier, right? And not catching COVID. The other side is looking at the mask as an infringement on their rights and freedoms, right? It's the government telling, and they're like, yeah, some people may get it, but it's more important that I be free and have my constitutional rights protected than have the government tell me to wear a mask. Does that make sense?
That's so stupid.
That's insanely selfish.
That seems so stupid because you get
Well-
a number when you're born. The government literally controls you. Why are you saying that? I don't want to wear a mask. Shut up. Nobody asked.
Right. Well, understand from their perspective. You know, I always will do devil's advocate, right? And so understand that from their perspective, and I have family members who I hear this from, right? But is that, where does that stop then? Let's say I'm like, okay, cool, like you're wiretapping my phones and you're listening into my conversations and you're monitoring my emails and things like that. Now you're telling me to wear a mask. Where does that stop? You know, the more we give, the more they take. And they fear that giving a little means that eventually we will lose a lot of our freedoms and our protections and our rights.
I mean, the only time I wear a mask is here at school.
Yep.
I wear one
I don't wear it in Walmart, I don't wear it anywhere.
I wear a mask. Like, I guess I don't have like a problem if people don't wear them, but my personal decision will be to because I do believe that it will prevent it.
I just think that like it doesn't impact you that much, just a piece of fabric. So the worst case is either
It protects
you get to be
from
uncomfortable or people die.
Okay. Yep. So where would you be? Wait. So let me ask. What side would the people be on that support the wearing of masks? On the left, on the Democratic side. Where would the people be who are like anti-maskers, don't think people should be required to wear the mask? Okay? So that kind of gives you, I'm curious if that matches up with your results from your ideology test too. You know, whether you're further to the left or the right. But it is, you know, one of the debates that's out there. And I think a lot of people say the same thing about the Patriot Act, right? They say, well, I'm not doing anything, you know, I'm not saying anything I worry about them hearing anyway, so what does it matter,
Exactly.
right?
Don't we have our phones tapped out?
But, you have to have a court order and things like that, but it made it a lot easier for them to do that.
Yeah, and like,
But what if the government decided all of a sudden that you're not allowed to say anything bad about the government? And now you get in trouble because you texted somebody that Trump's an idiot, right? Where does that stop? Do you see where the Republicans are coming from on that? Where does that stop? I'm gonna forget to get this too.
That's not my mask.
sorry. Y'all all the Briannas this year. Okay, and Caitlin's, no, not Caitlin.
Kylie's.
Yes.
There's so many.
Kylie, Callie, yeah, Kaylee, a lot of those. I have 3 in one class. A Callie, a Kaylee, and a Kylie. But what were you saying?
I can get what they're coming from by saying that,
Mhm.
but that's like the masks and stuff,
Yep.
they don't exactly go against your constitutional right.
Exactly, it was never
But
part of the Constitution.
If you got in trouble for saying your opinion about the political people in power, then that's against your freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So that could actually be like.
I feel like the
illegal
last thing is
in
just
that law.
stupid, like a bunch of people are dying, like, if you wanna die, okay, you can go die. But, not me.
Well, I think the biggest problem people have is that if you wear a mask, you're protecting others.
Yeah.
Right? So like you wearing a mask is protecting me. Me wearing a mask is protecting you. If I choose not to wear a mask, it's not really doing as much to protect myself. It's doing more to not protect you, which is where people really get worked up about it. But some people don't even believe the masks work, so then they're like, the government's just telling us to do something that doesn't even work. So like, that's why this is so complicated.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that are like, you're wearing a mask, why should I have to? Because
Right,
apparently it protects you, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not how the science of it is
Right.
working.
right, I know. Yeah.
There's also the thing where it's like causing more issues because like the bacteria that gets in the mask. when
Yeah.
you're breathing
Yeah, 'cause
it
people
in.
People
are
are
like
reusing their masks.
That's another-
Right, which is what I was gonna say, is like, you guys are washing your masks after you use them like for a day, right? That's what, yesterday I got here, didn't even have a mask because I washed them all on Sunday and then I forgot to bring one and I was like, thank goodness I had a spare here that the school had given us. And I was like,
The
whoop.
school ones smelled like dust.
Yeah.
Like when I put it on, it smelled like dust.
Probably, yeah, they've probably been sitting around for a while. Okay, we gotta make sure we get through all of this. How about the military? Okay? The Democratic Party is for decreasing spending on the military. And the Republican Party typically increases spending on the military. Okay? And the rest of this goes into the sort of why. And, into a little more detail, but basically, I mean, the Republican Party is much more like gung-ho pro-military. Like, they like having that really strong military so that maybe it deters some other countries who might mean us harm from just attempting to, attack us all the time. They also are much more willing to act alone. Meaning, we don't care what all the other countries think, this is what we think needs to happen, we're gonna do it. Whereas the Democratic Party, although they are supportive of the military, please don't misunderstand, okay? It's not like the military doesn't like the military. But they would prefer they're gonna spend some on the military, but they think we could allocate some of those funds from the military to other things. And that we need to rely on other countries and their militaries to help out. So if we're gonna use our military, we're gonna also have the help from other countries and the support of other countries, then we don't need quite as big of a military. Does that make sense? Okay? So it kind of depends on where you're at, and again, the ideology on that could change. If you get out of high school and you go into the military, or your brother goes in the military, or sister goes in the military, or something like that, your ideology on how much to spend on the military could change. My husband was in the Marines, and I remember the spending is so obvious because when he went in, Clinton was just going out of office, okay? And so the first couple of years that he was in the Marines, they had Humvees that were breaking down all the time. They were having to learn how to fix them, and they had to, they couldn't go out and shoot. He was a tow missile person. I just forgot what to really call him, but he was responsible for anti-tank in the Humvee up through the turret, shooting the tow missile. But he's like, he got to shoot maybe 2 of those in 2 years and practice with them. When President Bush became president, Republican, right? the funding increased so much that in that first year, he got to shoot like 15 and practice more. So that was and they were getting new Humvees that weren't breaking down all the time and things like that. So it just shows the difference in so if you're in the military or you know a family member that's in the military and you see that, you're like, oh, I feel like they are safer if there's more increased spending for the military and they're more prepared, so you might change your mind or at least be more likely to support the Republican idea on military spending. Does that make sense? That's how your socialization can change. All right, gay marriage and LGBT issues. The Democratic Party tends to be more supportive of those issues than the Republican Party. Okay? The Republican Party, there's a large base of members of the Republican Party who are very, their ideology is very intermixed with their religion. Okay? We call them like the Christian right. There's a reason why they're called the Christian right, because they're over here to the right. Okay? And so a lot of the baseline ideas of the Republican Party will come from those religious beliefs and convictions. All right? So when it comes to LGBT, you're going to have more people in the Republican Party who believe marriage should be between a man and a woman and nothing else, okay? That do not support recognizing transgender individuals, okay? And things like that. Now, does that mean every Republican doesn't support gay marriage and transgender rights? Does that mean every Republican is like that? No. Because I know a minimum of 4 LGBT people who are Republicans.
That's crazy.
I know.
What the heck?
They don't fit the mold there, but they are. And the thing is they're like, okay, I don't really agree with them on this issue, but everything else, almost everything else, I am much more Republican on, much more conservative on. So they vote, 9 times out of 10, they vote Republican.
That's so whack. What the heck?
And I believe that's changing too. The party's becoming a little bit more supportive of this than they used to be. Mm-hmm.
You know how it's set so that they're gonna start reversing gay marriage rights?
So here's the thing.
Like, at least.
You gotta be careful with what you hear in an election year, okay? Because anyone who says, you've gotta vote against Trump because he's gonna overturn Roe v. Wade, or he's gonna get rid of the Affordable Care Act, or he's gonna, get rid of same-sex marriage laws. The president can't do that. It's not in his constitutional powers to be able to do that. If it's a law made by Congress that has passed, he can't just not do it. He doesn't have that power. If it's a court case that has been decided by the Supreme Court, that's it. That is the understanding. The only people who can change the interpretation that the Supreme Court has set is a Supreme Court later on down the road, not the president. So none of that's in jeopardy. Right now, the gay marriage is really still kind of dependent on state by state federalism, right? And not the federal government. The federal government says we can't discriminate because of the Supreme Court. So it's still kind of being decided at the state level. Okay, abortion. This will also make sense too when it comes to, we talked about the religious right, okay? The Democratic Party believes that abortion should remain legal and they support Roe v. Wade, which means Democratic Party is pro what? Choice, yes. The Republican Party, on the other hand, doesn't think it should be legal and oppose Roe v. Wade. So they are pro-life. Does that mean every Republican is pro-life? No. Does that mean every Democrat is pro-choice? Mm-mm. I actually have quite a few family members who are Democratic Party voters who are pro-life. So not everyone fits the mold. Death penalty. Democratic Party, now listen, there's pretty much support for the death penalty in certain cases across the board, whether you're Democrat or Republican, okay? But generally, Democrats are more against it and Republicans are more for it.
Now, it's the death penalty for like murder and stuff, right?
First degree murder only.
Yeah, I think they should just have to suffer through prison.
Yeah, honestly, it's even worse being in prison.
So, first degree murder, you know, is capital homicide. That is premeditated murder. I planned it out, you lay in wait, you carry it out. It was intentional and it was planned out. That's the only crime in which that and treason are really the two things that you can kind of get the death penalty for in the United States.
Death is just like the easy way out of it.
Maybe. Some people like it because it's cheaper for the taxpayer. You don't have to pay for those people to stay in prison their entire life, right? But keep in mind, that death penalty doesn't mean that they walk them from the courthouse and put them to death immediately. They're gonna sit in prison for years waiting because they get the constitutional right to appeal. Before we put somebody to death, we give them the chance to appeal that. So, but yeah, that's that. Taxes, we already talked about. Government regulation, we've kind of already talked about too. More government regulation for the left, less government regulation to the right. So, therefore, healthcare, the Democratic Party is going to want to provide more healthcare for people. They want the federal government to provide it for all. The Republican Party does not support that. And it's not necessarily they don't believe that people should have health care, you guys. What it comes down to, especially with the Affordable Care Act, did you know there's a part of the Affordable Care Act that requires individuals to buy health insurance or pay a fine? Did you hear that? Affordable Care Act, one of the provisions in it says that you have to buy health care or the government is going to fine you. You are not allowed not to have health care.
Isn't the Affordable Care Act the thing with
Obamacare, yeah. So you can see everything else we've talked about, why the Republicans would be really against that, because if I don't want to have health, they say, if I don't want to have health care, I shouldn't have to. The government shouldn't force me to pay for health care if I don't want to take it. I'll just pay out of pocket for my health expenses.
It's funny that the people that say that are usually the people that can't pay out of pocket for those health expenses.
Right. Or who can.
Can't, like, the ones that say that are usually the ones that,
Oh,
if they
okay.
broke their leg or
Yeah.
whatever, they can't afford it.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, immigration. More forgiving of illegal immigration, more willing to let more people come, seek refuge here, etc. That's the Democratic Party stance. More forgiveness, more accepting, okay? Willing to have more come. Whereas the Republican Party, just for jokes here, because you'll get it, but want to build a wall, right? But it goes beyond that. They really look at illegal immigration, it's against the law, it's illegal. So they're going to take a harder stance on it, and they say, well, if you didn't come here legally, you're breaking the law. Your punishment is you're deported. Try again next time to come here legally. They're not going to forgive that quite as easily. And they want more border security so that there aren't as many who can just come across the border. and be here illegally. Okay? Gun control, more gun control for the Democratic Party, less for the Republican Party. You're gonna hear a lot of Second Amendment like arguments from the Republicans. Okay. Civil rights we've kind of already covered because it's just there's more, the Democratic Party is working more toward, on a daily basis, increasing protections for people who are considered minorities, women, and, you know, freedom of religion, voting rights, things like that, being LGBT, whereas the Republican Party is just not as actively working toward that stuff. Because again, it's kind of like, what have we done in the future? Hey, we gotta finish this, so you want your spectrum out still real quick. We got one more thing to do. So, all right, we're gonna practice this. Oh, lovely. Hang on, it's making me, for some reason, in the middle of this. All right. There's going to be 8 scenarios or statements. You need to decide whether it's a Democratic Party statement or a Republican Party statement. Okay? All you need to do is write down the number. Okay? So if number 1 is, I don't know, Republican, you're going to put a number 1 over here on this side. Okay? Ready? Number 1. Oh, it's mine, yeah, my plant light. All right. Number 2. Number 3. Got it? Number 4. Tax breaks or cutting taxes. Telling certain businesses they don't have to pay as much. Rewarding them for doing what the government wants them to do instead of passing laws to make them do what the government wants them to do. Okay, ready? 6. Did we already do 6? Okay. I felt like I didn't see it change, so then I was like, wait. 7. And 8. There should be 4 on each side. And they should be in the order that's on the board back there. 1, 2, 6, and 8 on the liberal side. 3, 4, 5, and 7 on the Republican side or the conservative side. Now listen,